Today I'm here with Paula Mitchell, who's on the advisory board of International Leaders UK. Paula's scaled and exited her own business in the past and is currently focused on helping companies create a great environment to have happy employees. And today we're going to be having a chat about company vision and communicating it. So Paula, great to have you for this chat today.
Thank you for having me.
Where do we kick off then with a company vision? What's your starting point?
So probably some context that I could offer around this is based on some of the work that we started doing around 6 months ago. So as you mentioned, our big focus as a company and our purpose as a company is to create happier employment and help companies do so with their own guise. And as part of that, what we do is grab a statistical analysis of how employees feel about their employee experience. And we do that via a survey. And one of the questions in the survey is, my company has clear vision. And you there have the option to obviously strongly agree or strongly disagree at either end of the spectrum. And what we found was from that data, there was really positive results. So companies scoring as high as 80s and 90%. So on the data side, it reflects really well on the employers. What we then found was, because as part of the next stage of process, we do confidential interviews with people and I ask questions around their answers. And what we found was when I said to them, okay, you strongly agree that your company has clear vision, what is it? And so you would then get a real myriad of answers. So things from we're trying to grow, we're trying to scale back, we're trying to consolidate, through to we're going into this project, this market, this. And what the kind of general theme seemed to be was that people's perception of what a vision was actually a bit more about goals and objectives. And now I'm not particularly pedantic about lots of words in companies and leadership and things, because as long as you understand what they mean for yourselves, often that's fine and that works. But with vision, I think it's different, because I think the fact that there isn't clarity on what vision actually means wholesale means that companies and employees don't have as much opportunity to actually grasp it in the right interpretation. So the interpretation I would offer is, vision is, what does the future look like because of what we have done? So literally this kind of jump forward 20 years and then sort of look back on how it used to be in 2021 and think about what change has happened in that period because of what we've done. So the difference with that is you're moving away from specifics, and it's quite unnatural for leaders not to have a measurable goal and all this sort of stuff around it, but it's more like a dream. It's more like a projection, basically. And you can get very big and very dreamy about it to say in the future that, it's going to be so much better in this particular arena because of what we've done. But the point is that that's the stuff that starts to emotionally connect us with what we have the power and the opportunity to do. So I think any leader comes into their job or company and sort of thinks, well, it's at point A just now, I'd like to get it to point B. This is simply about saying, from a kind of visualization perspective, what does that look like? And
I like the way you're describing that, because I think I often say to people, look, start with the end in mind, because you can't start planning now if you don't know what you're aiming for. And I think the brilliance of this with any business is you can set that vision yourself. You can have the imagination and be as ballsy as you want to be, really, within reason. And I think that's great. I think there is a danger of missing it in terms of either going too big or too small, and it's getting that balance right, and also identifying why you're doing all this. And often I try and encourage people to try and figure out the answers to the simple questions. Right, you've got that massive aim as what you're going for in the future, but why are you doing it? Have you got any thoughts as to how to kind of really solidify that kind of end goal, that end vision, as you describe it?
So, yeah, absolutely. So I think because what we're really trying to do here is tap into this kind of emotional connection element of it. From my perspective, primarily because that's what your employees and your team need in order to therefore do their best work. They have to be sort of living it to some extent within a, sort of serving a cause, and a cause that's bigger than just making my bosses and the shareholders lots of money. So in order to get to that, one of the ways in which we frame it for our clients is to say, well, in your industry or in the world, however big you want to look at it, what are the challenges? What are the things that are inhibiting your industry being as great as it could be? Or what challenges are within the world? So that could be technological, it could be environmental, it could be social. I mean, lots of them are social things at the moment because that's very easy for people to connect with on a human level. So And like you say, I don't know if you can go too big, actually, and I would explain that as follows. Our vision is that in the future, employment is happier. Now, it feels so odd because that's just completely unspecific, really. And, we haven't even defined how we're measuring it or anything. But honestly, if in 20 years' time I'm looking back and 3 people's employment was happier than it would have been had we not had some sort of intervention in that, then, it's still doing something that is moving you to a better place. So I don't think you can go too big, because you probably then, as go through the motions of following that through. So I think in short, the steps are basically think about what is the thing that most is needed in the world, your industry, that you're passionate about, and that fits in with the kind of values that are important to you as the leadership or the owners of the business. And then for me, second of all, don't be put off by the fact that it seems crazy dreamy or any of these kind of factors about thinking, well, how much impact can we really have? I don't think it matters. I think it's just about actually getting to this thought process of going, we're striving to do something better. We're humans. We connect with that kind of thing. We need to live in purpose and live and sort of in service to a cause of something. So what do we connect most with?
What would you say in terms of giving advice to, you've got the founder, the business owner of a business, or the shareholders. There's often a conflict between what might be underlying driving them profit, more money out of the business, and whatever they want to spend that on. When you're trying to set that and then know you're going to have to communicate it to your team, I always think you immediately have this conflict that you've got to try and solve. So what are your thoughts on how you kind of address that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I'll give you a quick example. In my previous company that sold in 2018, we always wanted to have a philanthropic element to it. So what we did was we donated 3% of our profit to charity or construction industry related training schemes and things like that, because we wanted this whole putting something back in element. But it was always a bit weird. And it's only since selling it and moving on and looking at this stuff in a bit more detail that I've worked out that it wasn't the purpose of our business to donate this money. It was just something nice we did with our money. So there was a big difference between doing something with the result. Our purpose was still, we want to make loads of money and have happy clients and a happy team, etc. But what we really needed to do, if we were going to make this sort of shift in engaging our clients and our employees more along the lines of this purpose, was to actually say, we will make money. The money will be the result, and the purpose will be because we think this is an important thing to do. We think that, investing wealth into needy causes and charities and investing back into construction is what is required, because not enough of that is happening. And because we're living in pursuit of this very purposeful vision and purpose, then the results of the company will come with that. So it's a bit of that chicken and egg thing, I think, really. And so we had that struggle of kind of getting a little bit away from that mindset of we're purely here to make money. The money is the result of everything else you do. You can't write on company's house, my company's main function is to make money. You write what you do in terms of your industry. And so shifting that perspective around starts to help a little bit, so that we can attune leaders to thinking your profitability, your productivity, your buy-in, your engagement will all be fueled in just a slightly different way to the way that you've perceived it perhaps up until this point. But it's a really difficult shift to make. And as you rightly point out, quite a lot of these elements are still slightly more window dressing-y, lip service parts for companies. And of course, you understand that this is decades worth of history that we're trying to just put a bit of a different narrative on. And until people have probably tried it, properly believing it and investing in it, then it's very difficult to see if you believe in the outcome, I guess.
Sure. So we talked a little bit about the company vision and, thinking with the kind of end in mind and looking at the future. You then got to start communicating this with your team and start figuring out how. I think one of the things that's really tricky is actually simplifying it so everyone in the business can understand it, because what makes sense to someone or a couple of people that have come up with this is completely out of context with everyone else in the business initially. So you've got to kind of almost simplify it and start thinking about how to spread the message down and around the organization. So what's your thoughts around how best to attack that?
So I think one of the really key parts, which actually ties in as probably quite a good solution to your previous question as well, is that this kind of work is best done with your team, with your people. In the same way as if you're asking a question of, what is our company culture? A leader would say certain things and their team would say certain different things, because we're all seeing slightly different, the company and the culture from a different angle. And so if you're putting your vision together, then that is the source, and that's the amazingly rich information to draw upon, is what's important to my team. It's not just about what's important to the 2 or 3 or 4 or whoever in the leadership team. And that, from a communications perspective, is an excellent way to start engaging your team in the interest in it, in the belief, in the changing kind of needs and wants of the business, and how that relates on a much wider perspective of the industry, of the world, of the community, of society, whatever it might be. So that's the starting point, is engaging them and doing, workshops over a number of months, which are very much based on values elements as well, which some companies may already have done a little bit on, but it's all those concepts, because they're all about the emotional kind of tie elements to between a set of employees and their business. Then they all link into one, and therefore it's a really rich place to sort of garner that kind of feedback and information on, to then formulate it more. If you've then had a team of people involved in that, the opportunity for this message and this to be communicated well throughout the business is just that much better, because you'll have protagonists in every level, hopefully, and again, different demographics. And if it's been done and if it's been executed well, then that should mean that it will transfer throughout the business much more easily than something that is completely top down and hasn't had a huge amount of investment from any of the team. I think with regards to communication of the vision as well, and vision, purpose, and when you then come on to goals and mission, one of the real differentiating factors about it as well is the fact that lots of companies have these beautiful strap lines and on the websites and things. It's really just then about what you do with it. And the point of having a vision and a purpose and goals is that you use them. So every time you might be making a decision or thinking about your next communication, your question should be, does this serve our purpose? Does this take us further towards our vision? And I think statistically, there's something I read the other day. I think it was a PwC report that said something like 79% of leaders believe that purpose-led organizations are the way it should be, but 68% of them believe that they're not using them in any way, shape, or form for actually a framework for how they're making the decisions and running their business's operations. So that's the main difference. If you've got a leadership especially that believes in that they are going to use them and that they're the top of their pad of paper or their computer every time they're making having a meeting, then that's the time at which you start to see these kind of things getting to the point of importance that it's going to make a difference.
You mentioned with this about having these workshops and discussions with everyone in the team. Now, everyone loves a workshop always, so it's sometimes difficult to get these things positioned in the right way to get a good result. To actually simplify, the purpose, and actually then mean everyone's almost got it written down in front of their pad or in their mind. Everything they're doing should then somehow tie back to the purpose we've set. So what's your kind of top tips for making the most of an in-house workshop to bring people together? How much time should you put aside to this? Obviously every business is different in size, but some people have full offsites, some people just have one workshop and nothing happens. And especially now, you've got some people in the office, some people remotely. To me, it sounds like a great opportunity to bring people together for something like this. But what would be your top tips in kind of trying to get the most out of a workshop like that?
So I think probably twofold. I think first of all, there's something really important about the selection of those who you have involved. There's got to be a real enthusiasm for the subject matter. So asking for volunteers who are particularly interested in it is probably the best way of culminating that. But as we touched upon before, making sure that there's enough breadth of demographics within that pool of people to make sure that there's good representation. So first of all, who are the people in particular who might be spearheading any of this work? And then second of all, the way we always execute any of our workshops has got three main elements. The first of which is psychology. So we look at, why are we learning about this stuff? Why is it important? Because again, unless anyone understands that sort of that stuff, that really meaty stuff, then there's going to be less investment and less interest. The second part of it is translating, say, well, if we learn about this, what do we then do with it? So what we just refer to as process. So what's the point of doing it? And then what do we do with it thereafter? And the final component is accountability. So that just comes onto, again, once we've learned about it, once we know what to do with it, how do we ensure that this sticks? And that's where our elements around making sure that every decision is made referencing our values or our purpose and our vision, etc., to make sure that it starts to become habitual. In terms of timings, that we would typically do for ourselves a sort of half day on the what is it, why is it, starting to then get people's juices flowing from the group. The thing about these subjects, actually, it benefits people most of the time to have a little bit of time to let it percolate. So we tend to do a sort of half day of 4 hours or so, and then leave it for a month and just put a little few prompts in to say, what have we thought about this, what other things, because it's even your own personal purpose outside of company, it's not something that you just kind of grasp like that. It takes, and it changes as well. So it's a bit about whetting the appetite, I think, to begin with, and it's a bit about starting to ask some really searching questions and putting that into this group workshop context, and then coming back to it. But I would have said after a day's worth of, in 2 chunks, you could have a pretty good idea as to what was important to your team overall from the representatives that you've got and where it's starting to get to at that point.
Great, that makes sense. I think sometimes people just struggle with practically what to do with this, but I think your three kind of objectives from a meeting, setting the scene, the process part, and then on making sure there's some kind of accountability, that kind of it's a nice framework to stick to make sure these things happen.
I think so, like you say, we've all been to a workshop and we go, oh, that's really interesting, or oh, I've learned something. The next day it's gone. And it's just about putting in some sort of framework that's not too onerous, because everyone's got the rest of their jobs to do, of course, as well. But it's about coming back to it and keeping it fresh in the mind it's forming new habits and getting into new understanding and belief systems. It takes time and it's got to be repeated. So that's the bit we feel particularly strongly about, so that all the work that people do and the time they spend in these things doesn't just kind of flit away and get stuck in the top drawer, the next day. Yeah.
Well, I think the key there is the momentum, isn't it? You've got to keep the momentum on. And I don't know if you've got any thoughts as to how you would encourage companies or advice on just keep it front of mind. How do you keep this stuff front of mind? Firstly, and then also, some people won't get this right first time, and you might have to go back and revisit it. And I think people shouldn't be afraid to do that, right? You sometimes have to reflect and go, do you know what? I think we might have missed that, or we need to be a bit more specific, or whatever the thing is. What's your thoughts on keeping that momentum going and not being afraid to kind of tweak or change what you thought was perfect originally?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's such a good point. With regards to establishing it, Atomic Habits by James Clear is excellent. I would highly recommend it to anyone. But the kind of short version of that is having, it's all, first of all, about prompts. It's just about bringing it to your mind again. So for me, I put calendar things in so that at 10 o'clock, I get a reminder about something or other today. Other people find it useful if they do use the same notebook or whatever when they go to meetings, write it at the top of that. You will probably know enough about yourself to know that there's your smartwatch buzzes or something. And there are these ways of which, when you know yourself and you know your kind of current habits, that you can find these little ways of just prompting yourself in with it. That's one of the kind of really simple tools that comes up in that book that is just really useful and so simple. So it's mostly just about reminding yourself and starting small as well. Don't commit yourself to writing, an hour's worth of journaling or something about a new subject matter every day. No one's going to do it, for any period of time consistently. So start small, work out where your triggers are to keep reminding you and create new habits. With regards to changing your vision, I couldn't agree more. I just think that any plan, if it's or anything set out, if it's worked out by somebody somewhere that this isn't the right way forward, then it's a stop and reassess. when it comes to vision, of course, you don't want to confuse people by flitting around. There's that to contend with as well. So this is why I think that kind of element of letting things percolate for a while and then messaging out perhaps on a more informal basis to say, this is the sort of stuff that we think is really important to us. In the future, we would like blah to be different. So how does that sit with a wider audience? And again, inviting in extra perspectives around that will just help shape it, or again, gain more agreement with it. But if it's wrong, stop. But I think if you can get to the point at which you have really sussed it out across a wider audience before it's then gone to the marketing collaterals and the big presentation and the whatever, then even better. But equally, in 2 years' time, your vision might be slightly different. You might have achieved it enough, or again, the whole world may have shifted to a place that's unexpected. And absolutely, there's nothing wrong with saying that was important to us in 2021, it's now 2023, and actually this is something that is very topical, very passionate, very motivating for us at the moment. We want to switch tack. We're not going to lose that other thing, it's always going to be important, but here's something fresh.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I've read the Atomic Habits book. I think it's great. There's a few simple things I picked up from it just to remind myself to do things, which is great. We're almost out of time for this, or we're running out of time for this chat today. What just finally, top tips? Yeah, what would be? Someone listening to this, someone going through the process of trying to set their vision for the next year ahead for 2022. What would be your top 3 tips to kind of kick that process off and get yourself in the right frame of mind for it?
I think if it's something that's quite new to you, first of all, read about it a lot, because like me, a few years ago, you may have been a leader that was very much devoted to productivity and efficiency and driving your products and services and more about tasks things. This is very much more around how you can create this amazing engagement and amazing performance based on relationships and those emotional intelligence that again have not necessarily been part of people's leadership makeup until the last 10 years or so, and it's become much more topical. So I think read about it, start exposing yourself to a world that's a little bit alien to you if this is something that's brand new. I think about it from also the different, that reframing perspective, I guess, that's sort of touched upon there, which is happy employees do their best work and they don't leave you, and them doing their best work is fabulous for them and their own potential and their own mastery and autonomy and all these other amazing factors. And of course it's great for you as a business, and their productivity and their best work will of course result therefore in much better results for you. So that's the sort of shift in mindset that I think is particularly important at the beginning, to think, actually we've been doing it this way up until now, how about we look at it from this perspective, what could be different? And what you then find is the kind of holy grail you're trying to get to is this place of what's horribly called discretionary effort, which is really the concept of that your employees and your team feeling like they want to go the extra mile because they care, not because they're being paid to, or they feel compelled to, or they're just being compliant, etc. So the third thing, I guess, is thinking about it from that kind of perspective of thinking, I want my team to be engaged and to be happy, and that reflects so well on my results and my customers. We want to get to this place of discretionary effort, and the things that's going to be the biggest factor that taps people into that is a cause that they connect with, and that they can therefore see why their own work is meaningful. Again, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. No, I think that's really helpful. Great summary. Well, I've really enjoyed the chat, Paula. So thanks very much for spending the time. I think there's a lot more we could be talking about, and a few things making me think as well about my own planning for next year. So thanks very much for that. I've really enjoyed the chat. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, likewise. Been good.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to find out more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, or would like to find out more about International Leaders UK, then you can find us on our website at www.international-leaders.uk.